strategies for the government contracting series. Today's webinar is how to market to the government. We have 2 more webinars scheduled as part of these series in May and June, and you can find the schedule on the flyer you'll receive after the webinar. My name is Veronica Doga. I am the Program Director of the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which is part of the Nebraska Business Development Center. Quickly to remind you about various NBDC services offered to small businesses like export assistance, market research, technology commercialization, financial projections and cash flow analysis, business valuations and business transition, and government contracting. The government contracting assistance is offered by the PTAC. We have PTAC consultants across the state in Omaha, Lincoln, Wayne, and Kearney. Our certified consultants provide confidential, impartial services and educational opportunities to businesses that are interested in selling their products and services to the state, local, and federal governments. Our services include government market research, where you can discover new markets, finding upcoming opportunities through bid match, bidding assistance and proposal review, certification and registration assistance, training and networking events, which include webinars, workshops, and seminars, and Meet the Buyer conference. I encourage you to visit our website for a comprehensive upcoming events and conferences listing. The format of this webinar is similar to the one last month. If you attended it, we'll have the presentation for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have the Q&A session for about 15 minutes. Please use the comment box to submit all your questions. All the participants will be listen-only mode. The webinar is also being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be available to the participants upon request. We have a new presenter this month, Michael Lejeune. Michael is the Program Manager for Federal Access. He's also former Army intelligence and has over 25 years of industry experience. Michael, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me here today on this webinar. And just to get started here, I want to not only thank you for having me, but also as a reminder to what you just said, I really love the services that the PTAC provides and recommend if you're on here listening, explore those services. It's a great service, in many cases free or low cost, and it's just a really good service that I think a lot of people overlook. And so use the service. It's a great one. So let's go ahead and get started here. On the session today is going to be how to market to the government, and it is about a 6-phase approach that we use to really building a perfect strategy for approaching the government. And it's going to be a little bit different than what some of you expect, but this is the system that my partner Josh and I have used to help our clients win over $1.6 billion in government contracts. So this is really the foundation of what's helped our clients be so successful selling to the government. So quick side note, I often get excited about this because I love talking about marketing, and so I may talk really, really fast, but don't worry about that. This is being recorded. You can go back and listen to it. But a lot of the things I'm going to say, I'm going to reiterate here and there. So you're going to hear them a couple of times because repetition is really how a lot of people learn best, and so I've kind of worked that into what I do as well. So last but not least, before I get started here on the slides, if you've got a question, please pop it in the chat box there. We don't want you to forget about that and at the end not have any questions or anything like that. So please, pop those in the chat as we go, and then we'll get to them towards the end. So really briefly on myself, I know they kind of introduced me a little bit, but very briefly, I am the Federal Access Program Manager over here at RSM Federal. Federal Access is an online system that we created based on our government sales manual that allows people to come in and do online training, whether it's on demand or some of our live trainings. It also has documents and templates and all that kind of good stuff in it. But it's kind of a unique solution that we built in the market. And it has helped our clients, at the time I made this slide, it was 1.5, but now it's $1.6 billion in government contracts. That's what our clients have won using the systems. And then I don't say this to kind of puff me up or anything like that, but just so you know who's speaking here, myself and Josh and our program have been featured in over 200 major media outlets around the country as government contracting subject matter experts. And so you'll see at the bottom there some of those media outlets, you know, like NBC and CBS and Fox Business and different places like that. So where we are regarded as subject matter experts in this field here. As I said, I'm also a Army intelligence, and so I spent my time mostly at Fort Hood. So I do have some experience actually in the trenches working as a soldier, so kind of understanding that side of things, and then on the back end actually selling to the government. And then last but not least, I'm an author of a couple of different books with a couple in the works, and a national speaker. So I speak at a lot of the major conferences like the National Veterans and different things like that. So today, just as a quick reminder, this session is going to be about 45 minutes, and then there's going to be about 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. If we need to go over that, I'll be happy to stick around and spend more time with you. So don't feel like we've got to rush out of here at the end. I'm gonna stick around and spend as much time as you need answering questions. So the session expectations today is we're going to spend most of the time going over what I call the 6-step process that I kind of talked about at the beginning. And then I have a final slide that talks about marketing best practices, because one of the things I didn't put on my bio there is I am a marketer at heart. So I study marketing in all different types of industries, in the commercial and the government and different things like that. And I really focus on that because I think it's become somewhat of a lost art, if you will, of how to actually get good materials in front of your prospects and get them to want to buy from you. You know, it's not the same as sales. It's a little bit different, but there's some best practices at the end that I want to share with you that will work in your business regardless of whether you're selling to the government or selling commercially. And I know a lot of people do both. A lot of people not only sell to the government, they also have a commercial side of their business. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to share with you on that final slide is really going to help you with both sides of the business for you. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the 6-step process. And again, you know, one of the things I want to emphasize is this is the process we use internally, because before we were a company that helped government contractors win government contracts, we decided to be a government contractor on our own and go after government contracts. And so over the years, we built this system, and it looks fairly simple, but as I get into it, you're going to realize that you're not doing a lot of the things that are in here. So even if you're doing one or two of the things, if you follow this system and do it the way we've outlined it, you're going to fill in a lot of the gaps that it really takes to be successful in this business. And, you know, what I often find is a lot of people actually skip steps 1 through 5 on this, go to step 6, create some materials that are very generic, and then they just kind of blast them out into the market. And that is what 95% of the people are doing in government, and it's why a lot of them are not successful. And if you go and look at the stats, if you pull reports from GSA, if you pull reports from FPDS, you'll actually find that a lot of companies struggle to sell to the government. And in fact, one of the statistics that we have learned over the years, and this is through, you know, speaking at government, you know, expos and different things like that, conferences, you know, seminars, whatever you want to call them. It is talking to our clients, talking to government. A lot of times it takes the average business 3 to 5 years to learn how to sell to the government. And we all know what happens, you know, in the first 3 to 5 years. Most companies actually fail. So a lot of companies take that long to figure out how to sell to the government, only to fail before they really get a grasp on this. And so we developed this to help companies reduce that learning curve and actually learn how to sell to the government in 6 to 12 months. And that's exactly what this does, because instead of you creating materials, again, in step 6, and then blasting them out to the world, we're taking the time to actually get to know our customers, our competition, our niche, you know, our capabilities, and actually build a strategy. And so what you will find is the bullet points on the right here is what is kind of the work product you sort of develop at the end here. You know, you develop some best practices from this. You can repeat it for any vertical that's out there. It is industry agnostic. It doesn't matter if you are product or service based or both. It doesn't matter if you're small. It doesn't matter if you're large. It doesn't matter if you have a socioeconomic status or don't. And it's really easy to follow, and that's what I really love about this system that I'm going to talk to you about today. And it does save time and money, and ultimately it increases your effectiveness, which is, when you're in business, it's all about being effective at what you're doing, because the less effective you are, the longer it takes for you to be successful. The longer you take to be successful, the more money you have to, pull out of your own pocket or savings or whatever it is, and it decreases your chances of success. So we want to decrease the time it takes for success so that you can actually stay in business, grow your business, and be one of the success stories out there. So we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about step one here. And so one of the things about this is you're going to see very quickly as we're going through these steps, because a lot of people say, well, you're kind of walking me through how to build this and how to find, who I need to talk to and that sort of stuff. Where do I distribute the materials? If you follow these steps, you're going to answer those questions. If you follow these steps, you're going to know who buys what you sell, how much they're buying, and you're ultimately going to know who you need to hand your marketing materials to, because you're going to find your best buyers through a couple of different ways. And so I want to start to kind of talk about that now. So step one is starting to research who buys what you sell so that you can narrow your focus. And that is, when I talk to most businesses, they have a very broad focus. They're like, we want to sell to everybody. So we want to sell to everybody in the government. And whether you're just starting or whether you've been in business for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, you need to narrow your focus when you just start selling, or if you want to rapidly increase. And the reason is you want to hone your skills and get better and understand what works so that you can rapidly scale that up. And so one of the best ways to find out who buys what you sell is FPDS. And if you've never used FPDS, it's a magnificent tool that the government created. It's one of my favorite tools out there. The easy search option is probably the best for most people. There's an easy search and an ad hoc, but the easy search is exactly what it says. It's very easy to go in and start to research by NAICS code, by keyword, by organization, different things like that. Exactly who buys what you sell. And so I highly recommend you go in and check out FPDS. If you've never looked at it before, now's a great time. If you've looked at it before and had issues with it, there's several videos on YouTube, some from us, that actually walk you through click by click, where you can go through and actually see, okay, how do I use this? How do I search? What does the information really mean? That sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's going to tell you who buys what you sell and how much and that sort of thing. And so it'll give you a really good list of that type of information. The next thing, once you have started to kind of narrow who buys what you sell, I always want to start calling people like the small business office and just ask them a handful of questions. And the reason I want to call these people is, one, they are actually set up to help you be successful. Let me repeat that for you. They are set up with their purpose in life is to help you be successful. Now, not every one of them is going to be amazing, because I've called some around the country and they were sort of helpful, and then I call others around the country and they just, they literally will make phone calls and introductions and do all kind of things for you. But it's great to just call this person at the organization you're trying to sell to and ask them a handful of questions. Some of those questions that we have right here are asking them about how the agency procures your services. Now, why is that important? That's important because they may give you information that you didn't know about. Like, hey, we only buy this service, or, I've only seen them buy this service on GSA. Or, hey, they don't use GSA. They use these other contracting options to procure these services. Everything they buy is under $3,500, or everything they buy is over $50,000, or whatever. They're going to give you some inside information. And even if it's stuff you already think you know, it's great validation for trying to approach this new customer. Another question that I always ask is, who are the contracting officers that I should be talking to? Because if you're approaching a large base or a large organization, there may be more than one contracting officer. There may be 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever it is or more, and you need to know who is the one in charge of buying what you sell. It's always good to know that. So I always ask, who are the contracting officers, that you would introduce me to or that I should be talking to and that sort of thing. And if they know, they'll tell you. And that's a great place to start. And so I also ask them, if you were me, how would you sell to this organization? Just a simple question. If you were me, how would you sell to this organization? Again, they're going to give you some insight, even if it's just one little piece of intelligence, that can often be the difference that helps you understand and actually sell to that organization. Another thing that's on there is vendor list. That's an important thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're calling around. A lot of organizations have vendor lists, like approved vendor lists and different things like that, or even just where you can just get on the list. And sometimes it's as simple as give us, a couple of things like your DUNS number, cage code, name of the company, and a couple of other bits of information, and we're going to put you on the list. Now, that's as simple as it is in some of these places, but it is a vendors list that's updated and sent to the organization every single month usually. And if there is one of those, you want to be on it. So this is a great time and a great person to ask, are there vendor lists that I should be on? After I call this person, I'm usually going to call some of the contracting officers. Now, if they gave you names, those are the people I'm going to call first. If they didn't give you names or didn't have names, a great place to find this stuff is through FPDS. If you've already done your research on FPDS like you should have, right in each different contracting action, there's a place for contracting officers. There's their name, phone number, usually email address, that sort of thing. So that's going to be on there. Another great place is FBO. So if you're doing some searches, and let's say you wanted to work with Fort Hood, you could just get on FBO and search Fort Hood, pull up any of the different solicitations that are out there, and scroll to the bottom, and there's usually a contracting officer's name and email and phone number in there. And even if you start with that one, that is a great place for you to just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you connect me with other contracting officers? Or hey, that might be the one that you are actually, wanting to speak to. But FBO is a great place to find these. And again, it doesn't have to be about a solicitation that you would go after. It could be anything. You're just looking for a point of contact to kind of start the process of gathering intelligence. And you're going to hear me say that over and over again through this, because a lot of what you're doing when you're reaching out to your government prospects, when you're reaching out to the small business office, contracting officers, people who are in the trenches at the grassroots level, a lot of times your number one objective is not to sell something, it's to gather intelligence, because that intelligence will actually help you figure out your next steps. So, just imagine it really is putting together like this giant puzzle, and you're always looking for pieces to that puzzle to help you figure out what to do next. And so when you're calling around, you're looking for little bits of intelligence that'll help you do this stuff. So when you talk to the contracting officer, here are a handful of questions that I love to ask. Again, I'm talking about the procurement process, because even though I've already called and talked to the small business office, I want to verify what they said when I talk to the contracting officer, because let's say your contracting officer doesn't like to do it the way the other 9 do, and they have a different way they like to procure your services. That's important for you to understand. It's important for you to not assume you understand. So just a really important distinction there. I will ask about simplified acquisitions. That's important to some people. It's not important to others. We want to know that. I ask about small business goals. Where are you at? How important are small business goals to you? How important is it for you to meet those goals? How difficult is it for you to meet those goals? Especially if I'm a small business, I want to be able to ask those questions, because, if it's very important to them, I will be able to find that out, and I can help them do what they do. And and most people are saying, well, everyone's going to say that it's important that they meet their small business goals. Sure, they will, to some level, but the people who actually elaborate on that and actually talk to you about it are the ones that are truly saying that, and not the ones who are just kind of giving you the company line. So you'll very quickly be able to see from the conversation how important these things are. And then last but not least, these last two bullet items here, these are very important questions to ask about. What conferences should I attend? What industry days are coming up? What conferences do you attend? Because these are places where your contracting officer is going to be. That's a great place for you to sit down face to face at a location that is not intimidating, where you can just have a very casual conversation about things. It's a great networking opportunity when you know about industry days and conferences and other things like that they're going to. So you really want to know about that, especially if there's a conference or an industry day or some sort of expo or whatever it may be that you've never heard of, and they say they're going to that. There's a chance that other people that buy what you sell are going to be at that as well. So it's really, really important, again, to gather this sort of intelligence. And then, the last one there, upcoming projects, a lot of people are saying, what do you have coming out in the next 90 days? And while that's great, I want to know about what's going on the next 12 to 24, 36 months in your organization. What are some of the big projects you're working on? Because if you just ask what's coming out in the next, say, 12 months, the odds are what you're going to hear about is, or ask about, let's say, the next 3 months, you're going to hear about like some stuff they're working on that you really don't have a good chance of winning anyway. But when they start talking about the next 12, 24, 36 months, that stuff you can talk to them about, develop a relationship about, be involved in pre-acquisition about, and it's going to greatly increase your chances of winning those things. And again, remember, if you just ask what's coming out in the next 90 days, and they're just saying, oh, we've got all these little projects coming out here and there. It's just, there's a 50,000, 100,000. Oh, there's $1 million project. But it's stuff that you don't have any intelligence on, and it's not their big stuff, because they may have billion-dollar projects coming down the pike if you talk about 12, 24, 36 months. So it's just really important to remember to ask about that. So step 2, knowing your competition. I think this is a really important step, not just for understanding who your competition is, but once you actually start to find who your competition is, it can make you better at selling what you sell, and it can also open up the floodgate of potential clients that you didn't know you should be selling to. So I always research my competition on FPDS. That's one of the first places I start with, and look at what are some of the contracts they have out there, who they sold to, how much money, are they making in this particular business. And as soon as I do that, I have a list of potential clients that I can start to go after. So right out of the gate, I'm developing that sort of thing, with them. I will go and review their websites. What type of contract vehicles do they have? Do they have their capability statement on their website? If they have the capability statement on the website, I download it, I review it, I look at, oh wow, there's 6 NAICS codes on here that I didn't even realize applied to me. And I should really look at that, or hey, I really like some language they're using, or whatever it may be. Hey, here are some strengths that they have. I need to think about those when I am approaching some of my clients. I'll also look at news releases and other information on their website, because I want to see how active they are at selling to the government, and just see, what am I up against? How hard is it going to be if I am selling against them? What are the strengths and weaknesses they have, so that I can really combat that in my proposals and, different things like that. I will also look at their SAM profile, again, not just because I want to learn about them. I want to look through their NAICS codes, PSC codes, other data, and just figure out, what are some holes that I have in my system. Maybe they have 12 NAICS codes in their SAM profile and I have 1, and I should add that. Maybe they have 1 NAICS code and 20 PSC codes, because the government really procures this service by PSC code over NAICS code. Those are things you'll start to find as you research your competition and see how their profiles are set up. Now, don't just look at their profile and say, oh, well, that's the way they're doing it, so that's the way the government's buying it. Go back to FPDS, put in those PSC codes, and let the data speak for itself. That way you'll know, hey, how much are they actually buying this way? Again, you're gathering intelligence, so as you continue your research, you'll be smarter about this business. I always recommend going looking at the GSA sales query tool. It's interesting. A lot of people are always told you absolutely 100% need a GSA schedule. We recommend it to about 10 to 15% of our clients, and that's about it. Because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll go and we'll look through and realize that, wow, the government doesn't really buy what you sell via GSA. And on the flip side, we'll say, wow, 90% of the acquisitions for what you sell are via GSA. So we want to know that before we just start marching down the path of, hey, I need a GSA schedule. So it's really good to do that. And you'll very quickly find, by going and doing this, how much they're selling on GSA. Then you can cross-reference that with FPDS and go, wow, these people sell $1 million a year to the government, but they only sell $10,000 a year via GSA, or $25,000 a year via GSA. Wow, they're not even going to keep their GSA schedule. It's really, really good information to find. Or you may see, wow, they sell 50% of what they sell through GSA. We need a GSA schedule. But if you go and do this research, it'll give you that solid information to help you make a better decision instead of just pursuing GSA without that solid information. A couple last things here that I recommend to know your competition. Go out and review all their social media sites. LinkedIn is the main one, but go and look at Facebook and Twitter and different things like that and see what they're communicating. Because a lot of times they're communicating things on there about contract wins. They're communicating things about, contracts they're working on, teaming partners. They're congratulating people. They are talking about conferences they're going to or just went to. And again, all this is great intelligence, because what if they, tweet something about they're going to a conference that you've never heard of, and they're one of your top competitors? There's a good chance you may want to go to that conference. And this may be how you discover that this conference even exists. So this is a great tool for you to just get better at what you're doing. And then last but not least, I will just Google their company. I'll literally go in, and I know a lot of you are saying, well, I could have just gone to their website. Well, go and actually Google the company, because a lot of companies are very poor at communicating what's going on in their business via their website. But if they're putting out press releases and not putting them on the website, it's going to come up when you Google them. If they are struggling with contracts and they're having lawsuits, if different things are going on, or if they're winning a bunch of contracts, they may not be putting it on their website because they're afraid of the competition doing research just like this. But the government's going to put it out there, and you'll find it in a government press release or something else, or a partner press release. So go ahead and Google them as kind of a last effort to see what you didn't uncover on their website. So the next step is kind of choosing your niche. And you're like, wow, we're a little deep in here to start choosing the niche. Well, it really depends on if you sell more than one thing. If you sell, like if you just sell one thing, then hey, your niche is really defined. But if you sell products and services, or you sell products and, say, replacement parts for those products and different things like that, and a lot of other different things, you may need to take a step back and figure out, where should I focus? And once you've figured out how much the government buys what you sell, and you know your customer, and you know your competition, that's at a point where it really helps you define, hey, instead of trying to sell this product, let's be on the support side, because I think we can make more money selling to the government on the support side of this than actually selling the product itself. And we're going to increase product sales by focusing on that. It'll help you figure that out if you do those first two steps first. So once you get to this point, I usually ask a lot of people, hey, are you going to be service or product based? It's kind of hard to be both, at least in the beginning. So you want to pick one or the other and really start to focus there. And I personally like to pick complementary products and services. So I've worked for companies before where we have 6 different product lines, and product lines 1, 2, and 3 are not complementary to products 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever you want to call it. And it's just one of those things where you need to pick complementary stuff as your main niche. Doesn't mean you can't sell all the other stuff you do, but you really want to get known for something first and then start to branch out and do other things. But this is really when you are breaking into this market or really trying to excel in your market, picking your niche and laser focusing is where you're really going to excel at selling to the government. So, one of the areas I look at is when I'm picking my niche is the competition. Can I compete with the top vendors? And a lot of people say, well, I've got to find a way to compete. Well, if you sell 2 or 3 different product lines, where do you compete the best? Do you want to go in at the product line that you have where you have 3,000 competitors, or the one where you have 3? Probably the one where you have 3 competitors. And that may be the easier place to break into the market. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but I'm saying it may be the best place to start. Another thing is scalability. When you come into this, the government expects you, when you fill out a proposal, they expect you to be able to execute on everything you put out there. And if you put out there that you can do a job, and then you start doing the job for the one company, and then you win a second proposal and a third proposal, but now your reliability starts to drop or your quality starts to drop, those sort of things, those will hurt you in the market. So typically when you're choosing a niche, I want to choose an area that I can scale easily and quickly. That will allow me to really focus on this. So like, let's say if you're in the engineering space and you are focused on something that's very scientific, that takes years and years and years of education to be really good at, that's probably not something you can scale easily and quickly. But if you are in the engineering space or construction space and you're digging holes, right? You're digging dirt and putting it in a dump truck. That's something that doesn't take years and years of education to figure out. So it's more easily scalable. You can hire talent for that a lot easier than you could for something very scientific. So again, just looking at your business, what can you easily scale that's probably going to factor into your niche? And then the last 2 here, sometimes it's important to be very focused on the location. So you may say, hey, I want to focus because our primary office is in Baltimore. So I really want to focus on, Baltimore type of work or Maryland type of work. It really depends on the type of work you're doing, whether it's stuff that can be done over the phone or whether it's stuff that has to be done face-to-face. So, look at that to figure out, do you need to be location-based in your niche? That's just important to think about. And then the last one there is department or agency focused. I typically pick 1 or 2. So let's say we're going to focus on the Air Force or we're going to focus on the Army or whatever it may be. It's great to pick something like that you can focus on and say, look, that is our niche right now. We are the best at providing this product and service to the Air Force, and that's where you want to start. Again, it helps you take your marketing materials and different pieces out of the generic and put them into the specific, and that's what we're really looking for. Number 4 is where you start to map some of your capabilities, and this is where we're starting to pull, our past performance from the commercial sector and starting to pull that in and get that, I call it, the government language ease, if you will, where you're starting to put it in government language where people can actually understand your past performance and your wins. And so when you're looking at past performance, you want to look at what are the contracts you've worked on, what are some of your big wins, who have you worked for, what are some of the things you accomplished that were even outside the scope of those contracts and different things like that. And you start to break that down to make it very, very simple for the government to understand what you've done. Next, you start to look at your core competencies, and your core competencies tend to be things that are differentiators for you. These are the things that separate you from other companies. It's the things that you're best at. It's the things that make your company really, really shine. And so we're starting to look for those at this phase to say, what are we the best at? And again, this is a place where you start to go through and say, okay, I know we do 10 things at this company, but what are the 1 or 2 things that we do really, really well? And now let's break those down into core competencies that make it very easy for the government to understand what it is we do really well and why. That's differentiators. Typically tell your customers why you do this thing better than anyone else. So we are, the fastest at digging holes because we have a huge team that just dig holes all day long, and we know how this works, or whatever it is. I know this is a silly example, but being able to differentiate why you're the best at digging those holes, or why you're the best at this complicated scientific process that you're looking at, or even something as simple as network setups or lawn care, janitorial services. Why are you the best at it? Is it your processes, systems? Is it unique or trademarked tools that you use, or supplies, whatever it is? What are the differentiators that make you the best? These are the big points here that are going to have you separate yourself from the competition. Next here is, we're talking about the niche again. Again, to me, this is one of those areas where when you have chosen that niche and you have a single product or service, this allows you to go from a jack of all trades to a specialist, to what we would call a subject matter expert in this one field. And being able to show that, to your potential customers is one of those things that says, wow, they are the best at digging holes. They are the best at installing internet services. They are the best at software development of whatever kind it is. They're the best at this because they've won these awards. They've developed these processes, whatever it may be. Those are the things that we're wanting to put out there to our potential clients. So last but not least on this slide here is a term a lot of people are not familiar with. This is something we call ghosting. And ghosting is when you are basically looking for things that you can do that the competition can't, and you're starting to kind of put that little bug in the ear of your contracting officers, your grassroots level supporters, saying, hey, here's something we can do. You should make sure that everybody can do this. If they're going to be a vendor of yours, supplier of yours, whatever it may be, they need to be able to do this. And this is the kind of thing that most of your competition can't do. Hopefully no one in your competition can do it because you have a patented process or a patented technology or whatever it may be. I have made a lot of money in government by actually having some of these systems in place when we would sell software, because we were the only ones in the world that provided software with the capabilities we provided, because we would help with the RFPs. And so a lot of times people will come to me and say, this RFP just came out, and man, it looks like it was written for this one company. It was. And the reason it was is because of someone like myself putting that bug in the ear of the contracting officer saying, I know there's 10 things that you think this should do, and those are all great, but here are 5 things you haven't considered that absolutely must be in the software in order to have the best of breed technology that's out there on the market. And they see those 5 things and go, wow, we need to include this in the RFP. And the next thing you know, you're the only one in the world that can provide that. Or you're one of 2 companies instead of one of 20. And so it just really helps level the playing field and then give you an advantage over every other competitor that's out there. So next, we're starting to build our strategy. And a lot of people are very familiar with this phase. They don't necessarily use it when they're thinking about marketing, but a lot of people are familiar with how to build a strategy. And so here I'm going to quickly go over this because I do think it's important. I think you need to focus on some of the big level goals. What are your revenue targets, over the next, 12, 24, 36 months, things like that. What are some of the customers you want to acquire? These are really important questions for your company to ask because, again, it's one of those things where without a goal, it's really hard to hit it. And I'll say that again, without a goal, it's really hard to hit it or achieve the goal if you don't have it. So if you don't know what your revenue targets are, if you don't know what customers you want to acquire, it's really hard to go after that goal. And so those are some things you want to start to work on right out of the gate. what marketing methods are you going to use? Are you going to use direct mail and email, webinars, different things like that, trade shows? You may find that the number one thing you need to do is educational webinars for your grassroots level buyers as well as contracting officers. I've seen people, create podcasts and different things like that for those people. It could be networking. It could be trade shows. It could be one of these items. It could be 20 items that you're going to do. But it's great to figure out when you're building your strategy, where are your target market? Who is your target market in there? And what marketing methods are going to reach them the best? And so you can work that into a plan instead of the reactionary side of things that most people do. They show up and go, oh, wow, I just heard about this trade show. We should go to that. Let's see if we can get a budget to go. And then you go and realize, oh, wow, none of our target market were there. This needs to be part of a plan, not a reactionary thing that you do. So what activities do you perform? I think it's just really important to actually start for every goal and actually break down, what are you actually going to do for each one of these goals? What marketing methods, different things like that. But what are you actually going to do? All these little activities to put together a webinar, to put together an email, to put together a trade show, to put together whatever it is. And who's going to do these things? Those are really important things, as well as the due dates on all this type of stuff. Again, I know a lot of this stuff sounds simple, but there are just too many companies that I work with where this stuff is last minute. Oh, hey, I just heard about this trade show. It's in 30 days. Do you think we can put together a brochure, direct mail piece, an email, order some stuff for a booth? And I know a lot of people are probably laughing when they're hearing me. They're like, yeah, we do this all the time, where it's like we've got 30 days to make this happen. And that's not how to run your business. You want to do things with a lot more lead time because the quality will be way better, and you can set up different things that you just couldn't do when you only have a 30-day window and you've got to rush to make decisions. So go through and review your plan. I like to personally do this every 6 months, review the plan and make adjustments to it. When you're smaller, you may do it more often, but it's very important to do this at least once a year, go through your plan and look at it. And then last but not least on here, one of the great things about building a plan like this is you will discover some gaps. And a gap is any place where you're like, wow, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to set up an email, or we don't know how to, let's say we're going to use MailChimp or Constant Contact. We haven't done that in 6 years. We don't know if our email list is right. We don't know what to do. So you may need to get somebody that knows how to work Constant Contact or whatever it may be. It may be that you're trying to develop a brochure or a one-pager, or even, freshen up your capability statement, and you're like, look, we don't know how to do graphics very well. I don't know what should be on here. You're going to uncover those gaps going through this process, and this is the place to say, okay, one of our things on our to-do list is actually to get some training on this, or to hire a consultant, or go on Fiverr and get some graphics, whatever it may be, but that's going to be the time to go and get this addressed. So our last piece here is actually getting to the marketing materials. And so these are the 3 main marketing materials you absolutely must have when you're doing government sales. Your capability statement is huge. This is something that you want to have it focus on your top buyers. I recommend you only have the key data in here. So if you perform work or can perform work in 30 different NAICS codes, I don't recommend you put all 30 on there and then another 20 PSC codes. Focus your capability statement on the specific niche that you're going after, on a specific client. In fact, I recommend you create multiple ones. You create one for, let's say, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, whatever it may be, and you have those custom tailored, the color, the graphics, those types of things, so it actually looks like it's tailored to that organization. And swap out NAICS codes, PSC codes, past performance, different things like that. Again, so when you're working with the Air Force, you can give them one that is again, it's in their color scheme. It focuses on past performance that's going to apply to contracts they have and different things like that. And what I typically do is I create 4 or 5 of these, and then I will have a conversation with someone, and then I'll even tailor it further and then give it to them. I typically don't just hand these out generically. I like to tailor it even further, but I like to have them focused on a niche right out of the gate. The other one is your government landing page. Everyone needs a government landing page. I don't care what anyone tells you. You got to have this because the government needs to know you're serious about selling to them, and the fastest way to figure this out is when I go to your website and I see government services or government right smack dab in the middle of your website. So that government services page is very, very important. It's really going to be a copy of your capability statement, and in fact, your capability statement should be a download right there on your government landing page. And then last of what I call the mandatory marketing materials is your business card. And I recommend you keep this simple. Have it, where it's like your major company data, maybe some NAICS codes, things like that. But don't overload it with a lot of different stuff, fancy things, and far out there images and all that stuff. It's just not necessary. You can really just keep it simple and professional. So these are the mandatory marketing materials. Now I'm going to quickly talk about some additional marketing materials. I do recommend having brochures and proposal responses and stuff like that ready to go. Again, these are things that you've kind of pre-built these for events, or you've pre-built it for proposal responses. And these are just things that are just going to be important to you down the road. I recommend professional graphics, and I recommend, if you are not good at this, do not skimp here. You want to go out and hire someone who can actually do professional graphics for you. The graphics that come with Microsoft are okay, but at some level you've got to move away from the Microsoft pre-built graphics and PowerPoint pre-built graphics into custom graphics that actually look like you paid to have them developed. And so that's really, really important. When it comes to brochures and things, you're looking for, one page or one trifold per product or service. You don't want, everyone to have like 30 different products and services on it. I really like to focus on one product or service. And I always like to focus on, what does the sales team need? If they're having a conversation, what does the sales team need to be able to hand out in order to be successful at what they're doing? And again, when it comes to like proposal responses, graphics when you can use them, structured and professional every single time. And if you don't know what that looks like, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to provide you a sample of what some of that looks like. And I want to really quickly just show you some examples of some graphics. You'll notice, it kind of starts off with kind of the basic Microsoft-esque feel, and then it starts to get into more custom graphics type of stuff, and even infographics that just look a little bit more developed by a professional here. These are just some of the examples. You'll see this one infographic on the right that we created for a client. They wanted it black and white for some reason instead of color, but it just jumps off the page with some of the custom pieces that are in there. Then on this next page, you'll see some of these capability statements, proposal graphics, and different things like that. Again, it's better than the black and white. The only thing that separates my proposal from the other guys is I've used a different font, or I've used a different color font type of thing. Having these simple graphics go a really long way for your prospects. So now we're starting to run over here, but this is my last slide here, and I just want to talk about this for like 2 minutes really quickly on some of the marketing best practices. I think it's really important before you actually design a piece to actually have a goal for it. So why are we creating this graphic on LinkedIn? What is the goal for it? Because a lot of times what you'll see with graphics is people create them without a goal in mind, and then you're like, what is this even communicating? I don't understand. And if you don't understand, the market doesn't understand. So every piece should have a goal for it, and you need to understand that goal going in. It'll make the design much easier. Every piece needs a headline. In fact, you should spend about 80 to 90% of your time getting the headline right, because that's really what's going to pull people in. It's just having a really, really good headline. Make sure your headline addresses who the piece is for. So if it's for contracting officers, say that in the piece. If it's for, the war fighter or whoever it may be, the end user, say that in the piece. We want it to actually jump off to that person when they see that headline. Some of the best words to use in the headline: you, your, how, why, 7 reasons, things like numbers and different things like that. Attention, those are really good words because they do grab attention from readers. Another thing about these pieces is I typically use 3 to 4 subheadlines anywhere I can, because subheadlines will often catch people's attention more than just paragraphs of information. And then I try to keep it to one or two key graphics per page, because some people will overload a document with so many graphics that the graphics actually become distracting. So we typically like to limit our graphics so that we're not overwhelming people with just that. Each piece should have a CTA or a call to action. And a call to action is simply, call now, email us, click here. You're telling the end user something to do, because there's nothing worse than putting a piece out there and someone sees it and reads it and then has no idea what to do. You want to have a call to action so they know what the next step is. The highest conversion rates tend to come from things that are high value and low commitment. So like when I go to a website, let's say I click on an advertisement, I get to a website and it says enter your email and name. That's low commitment. And if it's for our ebook or something along those lines, that's high value. If it's enter your name and email and address and phone number and all that, that is high commitment. And it's really low value if it's to be on our newsletter list. People just don't sign up for newsletters like they used to. So look at things that are high value and low commitment that'll pull them into your funnel so that you can start to email them about different things. And that is, to me, one of the biggest things is every piece that you put out there should add prospects to your pipeline, or should at least add them to your newsletter list so that you can continue to educate them and actually build up them over time to becoming a buyer of yours. And then last but not least, I recommend you always use tracking codes or affiliate programs, something like that. So when you're doing things online, or even when you're handing out postcards somewhere, they have some sort of code so you know what event that came from, what web page it came from, what ad it came from, or whatever it may be. So those are just some best practices that I think are really, really important to a lot of folks. And with that, I am done today. So again, I know that was super fast. If you have questions, I'd be happy to take those now, and we'll hang out as long as it takes. But yeah, these are a lot of the basics for marketing successfully to the government, and this is really the foundation that's helped us win just millions and millions of dollars in contracts. So with that, I will turn it back over to the team and be prepared to answer some questions.
Thank you, Michael. That was very good information. And we do have a question.
Okay.
So, Michael, one of the questions is, what strategies or advice would you have for companies without past performances regarding capability statements that are effective?
So one of the tricks or suggestions that I recommend is, and I assume this is a company that is probably brand new. So they're a company that's just getting started. They don't have a lot of past performance or anything like that. There's a couple of things. One, if you've been around but you have not sold to the government yet, what commercial past performance do you have? Because that is applicable. So your commercial past performance is directly applicable to this government business that you're running. The other thing, and this is one that a lot of people don't think about, is let's say you were an employee and you just started your company, but you were very successful as an employee working for whatever company it was, and you have done a lot of really great projects. What's the past performance from those projects? If you personally worked on those, look at the things you did while you were working for that other company. You know, let's say it's a big system integrator like General Dynamics or Lockheed Martin, or even if it's a commercial company like IBM or whatever. What are some of the projects you worked on that helped you develop the skills that you now have in the business, or even helped you, provide the services that you apply through your business? There's got to be something in your previous life as an employee that will map directly over, as long as you were directly involved. You can't take past performance because your company won a contract with the Army, but you didn't even work in the Army division. Like you didn't work in government at all. That doesn't apply to you. If your company won an Army contract and you worked on the contract, that applies to you. So a lot of people miss that one.
Great, thanks so much, Michael. One of the things that I was just thinking about while you were presenting is that you mentioned that this helps expedite the process for companies. So as opposed to being successful over the course of 3 to 5 years, this is a 6 to 12-month strategy. Do you think for companies that on step 5, if they don't have their revenue targets, customer acquisition, and timeline in place for step 5, should that really be closer to step 1, or do you think that that's okay to start addressing those things at step 5?
Well, I really think you can do all 6 of these steps in 30 days. So I really think it doesn't have to be like I'm on step 1 for 3 months and I'm on step 2 for 6 months. I think you can go through the process I just outlined in 2 weeks to 30 days, gathering the information and getting this stuff set up. So I personally think it's better to gather the information in steps 1 through 4 and then start to build your goals and your plan, because what I often see is people say, well, I've been told by my brothers, cousins, dog walkers, ex-neighbor who's out of a job that the government buys what I sell. And they buy billions and billions of dollars. So I'm going to go sell billions and billions of dollars of this stuff, and they get in here and they can't figure out why they're not successful, or, they just don't know. Like, why am I not being successful here? And then somebody like me comes along and says, because the government doesn't buy billions of that. They only buy $2 million a year of that service. And so I think it's important for them to do the research and then build their plan, because it'll help them know what's realistic. If the government buys $1 million worth of your services a year, is it reasonable for you to be able to get $100,000 of that, or $200,000 in the first year? But you really have to have that information before you go out and do it. We had a client about 2 or 3 years ago that came to us and was like, hey, we're huge in the mining industry. I heard Department of Transportation is where we need to be. And so we've actually spent the last 9 months making inroads in Department of Transportation, but we can't figure out where the mining operations are. And so I did 15 minutes worth of work in FPDS, and I said, that's because they've only sold $100,000 worth of mining services in the last 20 years to Department of Transportation. They don't buy this service. They buy this other service that you do. And so you've been going down the wrong path. And in fact, 95% of the services that you do are actually purchased by DOD, not DOT. And so they made a plan with speculation and drove way down the track in the wrong direction. And so that's why I recommend you gather the information, then build the plan, and I think you can do it really, really fast. So.
Thank you, Michael. We don't have any other questions. Just a quick reminder to everybody that Nebraska PTAC does offer market research services where we can answer all of these questions for you as well. So with that, I would like to thank you again, and we're ending this webinar. Hopefully we'll hear everybody next month. Thank you. Have a great day.